On behalf of the captain and the crew, we'd like to welcome you on board Experience 66, now departing for the world of curbside operations. Cabin crew arm doors and cross-check.
Thank you for listening to us today. If this is the first time listening to this podcast, welcome aboard. If you're a returning listener, we're glad you're back. Seat 1A provides tips and tricks from more than 5 million miles worth of flying to help you take off from the crowd.
In today's experience recorded on the 13th of September, 2022, we're going to take a look at what it's like with all the different curbside experiences at airports around the world and how to navigate through all that madness.
And then we'll wrap up with a discussion about current events in the world of aviation.
All right. So, and I think in our last one, we were talking about wayfinding and signage.
Exactly.
And that leads most of us out to
the curb.
That's right.
Maybe catch a cab, maybe catch a bus, maybe catch a train.
Or maybe
somebody, loved ones there, or friends or family or whoever to pick you up, or work or whoever.
Or you just go to
or
take
you
a look
just
and go
on
back
your
inside.
own way. Yeah,
that's right. The curbside is a very different place now. I mean, back when I was growing up, probably the same for you.
Yeah,
it would just be a taxi. I guess there could have been a bus in a bigger airport, or just public coming. And I would remember relatives. They would drive up. They would park their car at the curb, close the thing, walk in, wait to meet and greet us, bring us out to their locked car.
Yeah.
We get in, and then we drive away. It'd be no big deal. Good luck finding an airport to do that now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, modern airports have like 3-4 different lanes, and it's hectic and mental. If you're not used to it, or if you haven't been to certain ones, or if you're experiencing this in a foreign country, it can really throw you for a bit of a loop.
Exactly. And I mean, even domestically, I mean, it's a small airport in Regina, Saskatchewan that I was at the end of August. And I walk out the front entrance where there's, drop-offs and whatever. And fortunately, it was in mid-morning where there was absolutely no traffic, but somebody's going the wrong way down the road in front of the terminal.
Oh, no.
But there's no other traffic. So then eventually the person gets to a spot where they turn around and the security is like, "You're going the wrong way."
Oh, man. Oh, man.
And yelling at him when he came back that he was going the wrong way.
That just blows my mind, because all the roadways leading to our airport, like it's one way in.
Yeah. It's like, I think he like somehow came up to the curb and then like did a U-turn to leave instead of just keeping going on straight.
Wow. So I love it.
So it doesn't have to be a foreign airport. I mean, you can get messed up in your own country.
Yeah, right in your own backyard. So when you come off a flight and you're at your final destination, let's see, we'll leave the taxi for the end. So you come off, you could be getting picked up by someone.
Mm-hmm.
You could be taking public transport,
mm-hmm.
which comes in usually 2 forms, either a train or a bus.
Yeah.
But then the train can be broken down into further. There's, very advanced airports that have, like we've talked about with
heavy rail
fly, heavy rail, light rail, and then metro.
Yeah. And some airports have, two of the same, like two modes, like Copenhagen, for example, metro and heavy rail at the airport, just depending which turn you take.
Mm-hmm. And then what else? So, and then there's the newer phenomenon of ride sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So your Uber, Lyft, or whatever other platform, Grab, and all these other ones.
Right. You've got, if you've got passengers or people waiting for you, maybe there's like a mobile phone or cell phone parking lot where they're sitting and waiting for you to say, "Hey, come on by."
Yeah. And then there's shuttles to service providers. So there's hotel shuttle, car rental shuttle, or you have these sort of group shuttles, like bookable van type things. There's car and driver service, car service. So drivers with a sign waiting to take you to a spot.
Exactly. You've got like town car service or like limo service.
Mm-hmm. There's long distance buses actually.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's not just taking you into the city, but it's like it's going far. And I think, can you walk away from an airport in certain airports? I suppose there's nothing stopping you. Whether there's a sidewalk is another question.
Yeah. I mean, there was a whole thing in Toronto, for example, a person's like, just for the heck of it, they walked from downtown to the airport and had the full neighborhood experience, and seeing how it all changed as they went from very urban to, a very airport environment.
Yeah. I've had friends that are very much into cycling and cycling tours, and they would land, I think it was Amsterdam. They had the whole foldable bike scenario, unfold and just bicycle away from the airport. Now in Amsterdam, I think that all makes sense. But
now when you mentioned walkable, all of a sudden I got a picture of like Chicago Midway. I'm like, yeah, that would make sense, relatively sense there.
Yeah.
And even I know I didn't do it, but I wish I had. When I was in Venice, there's a boat that comes up to the airport.
That is true. I wonder if it's still operating. That's a good one to check on. Yeah, there's a lot of these city airports. You're right. In Sao Paulo, the city airport, you could do it. Even Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, used to have the municipal airport, Yankee X-ray Delta. And you could walk out and be at a shopping mall in 20 minutes of walking, probably.
Or in Toronto, I mean, they had the before they built the tunnel into the island airport at YTZ, they had the world's shortest ferry, which was like 60 feet.
Oh, right.
And they still have it because there's no bridge. But if there's like any deliveries or things, like the delivery vehicles just go on that ferry and get scooted across, kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's a lot. So if you come down, obviously, hopefully you know what on earth you're trying to do. Your first sort of encounter with it is going to be those signs. Now, before you reach the signs, if you have that car driver pickup service, typically don't have to worry about it. There'll be a person standing there with a sign with your name on it.
Yeah.
In whatever way, shape, or form your name has come out. And myself with a fairly unique name, I've seen very different versions of my name.
Myself with a one-syllable name, I've seen incredible versions of it too. So,
yeah. And again, depending on the airport, where to find the person can get a little bit complex. As most of you know, I work for the Olympic Games, and every time I arrive on my first flight into the Olympic City, I really sometimes have to hunt high and low for my pickup.
Okay.
Because airports will either have no organization and drivers just stand there and you have to sort of scan, or they'll segregate and put group pickups in one area and not in another. Sometimes to the point where they'll have a sign or signs pointing group pickup. So you have to know all these things in advance. And then again, something as simple as a geography of how they physically lay out. When you're coming out of a enclosed baggage carousel area, you got your cart, you've cleared your customs, you're coming out, the door's open, and you can go left or right. Well, left and right can go in two very different spots.
Indeed.
But people just follow the crowd, and you probably will just follow the person in front of you because that's the way it's going. But
is it where you want to end up?
Is that where you want it up? And then, word to the wise, do you necessarily want to follow the crowd? Because there's usually always some fool that will have their family or loved one coming to scream and rejoice and greet them right in the middle of the walking path.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have 5,000 bags with them and block the whole thing.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen
time
so
and
many
time
times.
Again.
Yeah. And I'm just like, can you please just pull up? Yes. We
and
want
it doesn't matter
rejoice.
Which country. It happens universally around the world.
Yeah. Here at home in Vancouver, YVR is one of the worst. So they have like this long curve. This is the international arrival component. So you come out and you are first in this sort of, how do I describe it? It's a non-secure zone, but it's a non-public zone. So tours and cruise ship operations, and there's like this Galleria area. And then you go through these glass doors that swing open, and there's the full public. Well, you then have to follow like this sort of long curving path with a metal bar on one side. The problem is family can see you in that Galleria area. So they'll get excited.
Okay. So they get already, but you have no idea they're there.
Right. And they'll come running up this curved sort of walkway, which is
Yes.
not terribly as wide as one would think.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of opens like a mouth. It gets wider and wider. And time again, people are just in there getting jammed up. They haven't even made it out. So,
well, I mean, Toronto has something similar where you come out, you turn left or turn right and down a ramp, but the glass is frosted, so you have no idea
exactly
who's on the other side.
Yeah. Anyway, we digress. So, assuming you are heading for the curb, if you are heading, let's talk about the trains. Trains are good. Trains can be a lot of different things in different countries. It could be train. What else can be? Metro.
Yeah.
Subway.
Yeah.
Rail.
Yeah.
So you really need to know, and again, this all comes with prior research.
Or a glorified tram in some cases.
Yeah. So let's look. I mean, we talk about Frankfurt a lot. They're very advanced. They have a full rail station, train station built
Two rail stations built in the airport.
Right. Okay. Well, what are the two then?
So one's for local trains and commuter trains, and the other is long distance.
So if you just are simply trying to get to the city center, which one would you take?
Probably the one that's right under the terminal, because the regional trains stop there and there's less of a walk. Mm-hmm. And it's the one that opened first in the early 70s.
And I know the exact point where you would have to decide that, because you go down or you go up to the long distance rail, correct?
Right. There's been a little bit of renovation, like when I was there in the end of July, some renovation since I had been there about a decade before. And, the old green floor is no longer there. It's been changed. But
I miss that green floor.
Yeah, and also just some of the stuff that got built in the underground part with just it's more hospitable than it was in the past, or was updated and renovated. So
yeah. And the problem I find with when you have complex rail like that is some airports don't really do a good job of just making it really simple, saying train to city.
Yeah.
Rail to city. It just says train.
Yes.
So I've seen a lot of people getting really discombobulated. I've seen people in that Frankfurt in the long distance. You can tell they're just trying to get to Frankfurt main station.
Yeah.
And if they strike lucky and the long distance train happens to be going that way or is terminating there, it happens to be.
Well, that was my experience years ago, the first time I was ever in Frankfurt in the mid-90s. And that was before the long distance terminal was built, and everything, long distance, short distance, all stopped at the platform underneath. And I remember getting there and I'm like, oh, am I supposed to take this one that's going to end up in Budapest, or am I supposed to take this one, or which one am I supposed to take? So
it's funny you mentioned that, because a coworker recently flew via Frankfurt, and I said, oh, you should pop in and, go shopping or do something, like take a quick break into Frankfurt, Maine. We were talking about trains, and I just remember telling him, like, I don't think I've taken the same train twice, style of train, into Frankfurt. In my experience, it was always a different thing. I was always unsure, like you just said. I'm like, is this the right train? Am I going the right direction?
And I did that briefly when I was flying out to Johannesburg. I popped in for like half an hour just to be like, all right, I've been at the station and now let's go back. But then it's like, okay, which ones go back to the airport?
Yeah. Because
I mean, I'm going to catch a regional one, but is it going to stop at the station?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on there. We look at something like London at Heathrow, the underground, the tube, the Piccadilly line's been there for a long time, but it's all labeled as the underground.
Yes.
It doesn't say train to city. Although maybe they have marketed that towards the Elizabeth line.
Well, and the issue is, I mean, when you take the actual train instead, I mean, you've got them specifically stating, okay, this is a Heathrow Express versus this is an Elizabeth line. And people who not necessarily knowing that they're trying to get to Paddington, if they want to spend, twice as much to take Heathrow Express and take only about 10 minutes less.
Exactly.
Or take the Elizabeth line. So it was interesting seeing some tourists who looked like they had been in London for the first time, and they're like, no, we got to catch the Heathrow Express one. I mean, it works okay the one direction, but it won't work okay doing it the different way. So you can go on Heathrow Express and probably on the Elizabeth line with no issue at all, but the other way definitely doesn't work at all.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember when they used to have the Heathrow Connect, which is the
True,
predecessor
yeah.
to the line that the Elizabeth line runs on. Double the price for the Hex Heathrow Express and double the time, but we're talking 15 versus 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And as you said, all these unknowing tourists will be blowing their money and complaining about it because they're like, oh, Heathrow Express, that's the train to the city.
Yeah.
Or you could go for a fraction and take the Piccadilly line for the real.
Oh, the real experience, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, also like Paris, I mean, you take the RER stops or the TGV stops. I mean, you're in two different spots of the airport.
Yeah. And that's another one that really threw me for a loop. I remember going there, like trying to find train to city. It's not clear.
Yeah.
It was only clear if you knew that Paris Gare du Nord is one of the major stations in the city. Then yes, that's city center, of course.
And then
it doesn't say
something else like, Châtelet Les Halles or whatever. It's like, it's like, well, where am I going kind of thing? And which color, A, B, C, D, E, whatever. Which one's the right one? And then you talk about like trains that like cost way more to go to the like pretty much the same thing, maybe like a little less stop. It's like in Oslo, for example, there's the high speed train that does nonstop from Gardermoen to the city. And then there's like, if you catch like say the intercity that's coming from other cities and makes a stop along the way, it has like one stop and it's about at least half what the high speed train is.
Yeah.
But then you've got other cities say like, or the airports say like Singapore. It's like, the
very clear
metro is right there, and there you go.
Yeah. On our recent trip to San Francisco, things got a little bit confusing as well. So they have what's called the BART, which is, we'll call it Metro, which runs right into SFO. The BART goes to certain places. It's not a full blown, highly developed line. I mean, it goes far, but not everywhere you want to go. But they also have, I forget the name of it.
Caltrain?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Caltrain. But the Caltrain doesn't go to the airport. So again, now we can start talking about buses. You have to take a bus to get to the Caltrain.
Yeah.
Right. So there's these other stations that exist that you then have to connect. So now we can talk about if you're the curb and you're trying to catch a bus. Well, my goodness, there's so many buses. Just
yes.
Well, we're focusing on the U.S. So one thing that strikes me about all these major American airports is just insane with the shuttle buses.
Yeah,
like it's absolutely mental, and 90% of them are silly car rental shuttle buses.
Yes, and they're all like the short little.
They have 40 Econoline vans. Well,
yeah,
I mean, big airports have like full on like coaches.
Yeah.
That many people going to rent cars. Like it's just wild and it's aggressive. Like you got to know. And these buses are fast.
Yeah.
And it's very intense, I found on the curb.
And even, I mean, compared to like other cities as well, where there are like hotel shuttles. I mean, the US, I just found like, bam, like everybody is in.
Yeah. And hotel shuttle as well. You really have to look. Is it a dedicated, the whole shuttle is painted, whatever, Radisson maroon and Hilton blue? Or is it one of these like common
cream colored
where you have to look at the logo on the side, small sign,
or a piece of paper in the windshield,
or both,
or
they use both? It's like, so we would, when I was crew, a lot of airports we'd go, there maybe wasn't dedicated crew transport. They would just make us take the
airport
hotel shuttle,
or hotel
like
shuttle.
Toronto Pearson. You never knew what was coming around the corner. Like you couldn't really just like take your eyes off it, because sometimes it would be a dedicated, sometimes it would be a shared. The shared buses all look the same make and model.
Yeah.
So you're staring at the thing, and this is all well and good on paper when it's like -40 with wind chill and you're wrapped up and you're trying to stare. Yeah. It can get a little bit wild.
And it's 10 at night in the dark.
Yeah. It's funny. It's only in the US I find this. Like, are there no shuttle? Oh, I guess in Asia, the car rental market's not quite the same.
True.
And are there shuttle buses to Asian airport hotels. There are,
Mm-hmm.
but it just seems a lot more calm and a lot more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, relaxed. Something frenetic
Orderly.
about the US ones. Orderly.
Yeah.
Yes, orderly. That's right.
Yeah.
They're
U.S.
taking
sometimes
buses.
feels like it's Wild West in front of the doors to the terminal.
Yeah. And when you add to that, then the roaring engine noise and maybe heat because it's summer,
Yeah.
and then honking and people yelling and drivers coming out and yelling.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow. So when you come out to these curbs, you have to find the spot. So
Yeah.
again, the word bus gets interpreted in many ways.
And since I mean many of the U.S. airports haven't been renovated in quite a long time,
Mm,
I mean, in other countries where departures and arrivals would be on different levels, I mean, the U.S. it might be all in one.
yeah. Like the first sort of half is departures and then it
Yeah,
transitions to arrivals.
but it's like, hey, well, that's full or that's empty, whatever. I'm just going to park here. To heck with it.
Yeah. Now we got onto buses because we said, okay, getting bus connection to train, which is essentially part of public transit in a way. So, and then this is what we're talking about in San Francisco. So we plan to take the Caltrain in. Well, you got to take this public bus to get to the Caltrain station. So my wife and I followed the signs and we ended up in one of the most dingiest, dodgiest curbs of an airport that I've ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the hubbub, we left that behind. We just kept walking and walking. And we ended up where the sign told us to go.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm expecting to see a post with the public transit logo and
Mm-hmm.
the number of the bus. Well, there wasn't any of that. I think it was just a generic, some sort of sign. And there was nobody really around. It was very quiet. If it was the middle of the night, I would have been like, no, this something's not right. We're not here. But it was the middle of the afternoon. And there were random other people there. Employees would come by. And then, you know, an employee shuttle would come to take them to employee parking. I'm like, well, okay, buses do stop here. But I had yet to see any sort of form of a public transit bus show up. Eventually one did. It wasn't ours. I was like, okay, well, more than one route stops here. And finally someone, I forget who it was, a staff or someone, we asked them, like, yeah, it does stop here. And eventually the bus came and we got on. There's no indication, no curbside signage at all to say, yes, this will take you to the Caltrain. Or as well, don't forget to either have cash or you have to download some silly app to pay.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, terrible. So it was just wonky. And if
so if you're doing it from San Francisco, take the BART and change somewhere closer to the middle of town?
Order a limo.
Oh, there you go.
Simply that.
Sorry, the tech guys already ordered it. So
yeah, exactly.
If you're liking this episode experience, you may also enjoy Experience 15, Railway to Runway, Your Train and the Plane. It's available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Whereas in Toronto, I mean, the Rocket, the classic, the famous, is it the 192? Is that the number?
That was the old number. It's like 900 something now because they changed the numbers a couple of years ago. But yeah, it used to be 192, and it would just be sort of expressed to the last stop on the subway. And it's nice on the bus, like on the subway maps now, that it's like it's marked as a route to the airport, and it does have a bus, and it shows it's like, hey, get out here and go there.
See, that's part of wayfinding.
Yes.
Is exactly showing that exists. And again, maybe it's changed now, but in the days when bus did not take any other form of payment apart from cash, I remember always having to run into the convenience store there
and break change
to be able to pay for said bus.
Well, that was like me, wasn't necessarily at an airport, but I was in Singapore and trying to buy something on the MRT and realizing I didn't have any change. And I'm like, I'll just go buy some gum. And I get inside, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm in Singapore. I can't buy any gum. So I had to buy something else.
Classic. There's also buses for staff. Like I mentioned, there's employee buses. Airline crew have their own buses typically. Mm-hmm. Generally, they'll be branded and they'll say crew. But if it's for a crew that's not based there, then that comes into play. So those are more just unbranded, unmarked shuttle buses that go to a specific stop on that curb. And then there's also buses that will take you long distance as
Mm-hmm.
well. I say long distance, I mean like maybe a town or a city that's 2 hours away or something like that. And they'll
Yeah.
have like sort of express services for people that do that.
Well, for example, I know we've talked about Frankfurt. I mean, they've got all the trains and things, but there are specific other cities that get served by buses, like Lufthansa buses.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Funny you mentioned that. In my recent experience, just over a year ago, working the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, we were based at Haneda Airport. We were actually using a hotel at Haneda Airport. So I saw all versions of buses. And Japan Airlines, as well as ANA, run their own bus lines as well.
Okay.
So now this comes into play of buses as a method of getting into city center or select points in the city center.
Right.
So there's sometimes you get cities that offer so much choice, you don't know which bus to take if you haven't done your research. So you come out to the curb and, if you had been flying Japan Airlines, maybe you think, oh, I'll just take the Japan Airlines bus, but is that necessarily where you need to get to in the city or not?
That's true. I mean, like Grand Central Terminal in New York City used to have, I can't remember, was it KLM or Air France or somebody that used to go there along with like other American airlines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a bit of it's confusing for sure. So if you don't know, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
If you know, then you really have to go seeking it out and you have to pay attention and not simply just follow the crowd. So there's the buses, we've got the shuttles, we've got the crew shuttles. I feel like I'm missing one here. We got the bus that takes you to rail.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also rail to rail. Actually, you
Yes.
just mentioned New York, JFK.
Yeah, you take, if you're going, say, from Penn Station, you take it to Jamaica and then you change.
Yeah, and then you take this interterminal sort of loop train thing.
And same with Toronto, for example, not anywhere as extravagant as New York, but it's like, yeah, you come in on the up and then there's the interterminal train or I mean, Frankfurt or wherever. I mean, Paris. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, you're going around different terminals on a train.
And to add to this complexity is if you have luggage or a cart full of stuff, or you have little ones or something, this really can stress people out and make them choose convenience over correct mode of transport.
Yeah.
Because you just mentioned that the up to interterminal, I remember a few times having to take it elevator, escalator, up, down, around, and backwards just for the short run.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an event to get through. You go through like almost to where the parking lot is, and then up and around. And when I landed I've landed there times before. Like all the escalators are out of service, and you're like, oh man, in the elevators, it's like, well, who do you wait for?
Yeah. So now we can bring in. We're always going to save taxi for last. They're the biggest offenders.
Yeah.
Rideshare, Uber, Lyft, whole new world. And a lot of cities are contending with that. Even in my own workplace, we're contending with this whole new phenomenon because it's a lot of variables. I mean, essentially, it's a private car that can pick you up at any point. But I think a lot of major airports have embraced and acknowledged that it's there to stay. And they're doing the right thing and giving, a nice zone. So it's good. But again, what is ride share? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Others may call it by their brand name and just they don't notice that. They just say Uber.
Your Uber, your Grab, your Lyft.
Uber, Lyft, Grab. Yeah. The list is endless.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of Uber, I don't know if anyone else has it. They have like the Uber lounges at airports.
Okay.
I remember flying into, which airport was it? Rio Santos Dumont, the city airport. And I knew I was going to do an Uber. So I went for pickup and said, proceed to the Uber airport pickup lounge and then indicate when there and the driver will show up. Like, oh, this is new. Okay. And I followed. And it was all signed properly. And there was this very chic, and I don't know, I'm assuming it's still there, lounge, like with white leather sofas kind of thing.
Okay.
And neon, like nice mood lighting, bottles of water.
I was almost going to say you're getting drinks with umbrellas in them.
Pretty much. Well, sorry, I didn't order the Uber Black
Yeah.
service. I was just being cheap. So I said, okay. I indicated on the app, and eventually the car showed up, and they had designated parking spots, and the car reversed in, trunk open, and the thing binged and said, proceed to stall number whatever,
Oh,
8.
wow.
And there was the car. I mean, I obviously license plate and make and model. I knew that was it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And it was amazing. It was
Yeah.
the best thing ever. It was great. Heathrow had a similar sort of thing. They didn't have like the lounge per se, but they had sequestered off. And let me think of the terminal. I want to say 4. No, this is 4 that had this particular experience. So maybe they've done this in the others. They took a chunk of one of the parkades and sent all passengers there to jump into their ride shares to go.
Okay.
And so they have like this long curb, and cars will be pulling up, and people will be jumping in. So yeah, anyway, back to the curbside then is, where do these guys exist?
Yeah.
In the mix, right?
True. And it's like, well, like you drop or you get picked up, and it's like, we've talked about insanity of airports in the summer. And I mean, there was one trip I told my driver, I'm like, yeah, it was like 7 a.m. or something. I'm like, yeah, just drop me on the departures level. Sorry, on the arrivals level, because it's not going to be busy.
And there you have hit the nail on the head, is the issue with ride shares, that, yeah, they're no longer in the control of the establishment. It's in the full control of the rider and the driver.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, you can tell the driver to do anything. The driver will do whatever he wants with you, and you can agree to pick up or drop off spot. And that's where the airport loses control of the whole thing. So that adds a whole new twist to the dynamic of it. I mean, it's great for us as users, and I'm sure it's great for the driver as well to have that. But it's a whole new dynamic that never existed, because in the past, or not in the past, to this day, systems are
the previous model meant
out.
that there was a taxi rank.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in some places, a taxi rank and a limousine rank.
Exactly. And so now taxis.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, as a segue, there's a new complication, is you can now also order your taxi through app.
Through apps, yeah.
Right? Or taxis will double, what do you call it? Doppelgang? No. When you work 2 jobs, double dip.
Yeah, double dipping, yeah.
And be a ride share as well.
Okay.
So it gets really complicated when you're rocking up looking for a yellow car, like, okay, I know where this is going. And that curbside, it says ride share, it'll say mobile app, it'll say all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So you really never know. The taxi is the long tried, tested, and true method, and the taxi will always have its place. And certain cities have great taxi systems, certain cities do not.
Certain cities have, or many cities have zoned out cost, flat cost depending where you go. But then other places, it's like you get in and it's off the meter.
By the meter. That's right. I mean, Singapore is very organized. There's the taxi queue, and it moves, and there's staff, and the vehicles are pulling up in load zones, and you get directed, and you only have a choice. Other cities, it's literally just whatever rocks up at the curb.
Yeah.
Like here in Vancouver. And yeah, and then the pricing starts to come into play as well. So if you're going to go for a taxi, or what's an American term? I guess it's cab. Yeah. You really never know.
And in some cases, it may be worth your while to just check and see. It's like, okay, well, do I know how much prospectively it would cost? And if there is no zoning for the airport, then all right, what should my fare prospectively be?
Yeah. And this is where the dodgy taxi drivers take advantage of people. And I've had plenty of experiences. I'm sure you have.
Mm-hmm.
Russia is notorious. So the last time I went to Russia, when I did the Trans-Siberian Railway, the instruction, because I did an organized tour, and I landed in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
And it was specifically go to this stall. No, it was to take a taxi to the hostel. Go to this stall by door number, whatever, 10. Buy a ticket to this place, and take that form of taxi. And I did that. And I had been to St. Petersburg, I've been to Russia before, and I know that that's the official taxi, the airport taxis. But if you stand out and walk one curb length further, there's all these other, generally male, taxi drivers just ready to shark you.
Yeah.
And take you for a ride, literally take you for a ride, both in your wallet and physical person.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, in this instance in St. Petersburg, bought the ticket, I paid the money.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. There was someone outside. They radioed the taxi and they said, look, it was kind of like a hybrid Uber. So I paid for it. It said, taxi number this is coming and you must go in this taxi. Amazing. I stood there and I could see them all coming towards me. Oh, sir, taxi, taxi. I'm like, no. Car showed up. In I went and it was done.
And off you went. Yeah.
But so many cities of the world, you come out and it's like, oh, taxi, sir, taxi, go here, go there.
Well, and it was like, when going back to the trip this summer in Mozambique, we landed in Maputo and I was with an Italian guy and a Mexican guy. And, we're just out front and haggling over the cabs. And I mean, fortunately, the Spanish guy or the Mexican guy is like speaking Spanish and driver's like this. And he's like, oh, come on. And he's like, like, you wanted 1,500? And then he's like, no, like no more than 1,000, like, and then the driver's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. See, if you know what you're doing, if you got your A game on and you know how much is your sort of acceptable price and you're confident haggling with these people, it could all work out quite nicely as well.
But I mean, if you're in like a city and it's dark and it's late and whatever, and your flight's delayed or whatever, and you don't care, or you're tired and you've been flying forever, you're probably not in your A game.
No, exactly. And yeah, you got to be careful. I remember once in Ibiza, landed myself and a friend, and there was no organized taxi thing. So you're just kind of out there. And here comes one of these people. Hey, are you going to this place? Are you going to this place? And so in Ibiza, there's different parts of the island. So we're going to Playa d'Anbassa. Yes, we're going there. I have room for 2. Okay. And we knew we were getting into some rando.
Yeah.
And he quoted the price. We're like, you know what? That's actually okay. Sure. And we go, and there's 2 other people in the car as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, okay, there's enough seats or seat belts. Fine. I'm looking at the luggage. I mean, the guy had a hatchback and he jams all the luggage in there and he's like, pushes the hatch down. I am shocked that the glass didn't like explode, shatter with the amount of force he was. And then I was thinking like, okay, it's one thing your car may explode, but you're also crushing our bags and everything in it. Like, thanks, buddy. And so we all jumped in and bang, off we went. And probably was not a real taxi driver. I was just a Joe Blow.
Yep.
And this happens. I mean, right?
Yeah, depending on, taxi commissions and licensing and medallions and everything else related to taxis, right? So
a long time ago, I was a student, went into Toronto for a student organization, small conference. And it was like one of these like cold, dark, rainy nights. Mm-hmm. The curb was just rammed. There must have been 100 people in that taxi lineup. I didn't know anything
like
about
the old T2 or the old.
Yeah, it was. You are correct. It was the old T1.
The circle.
Oh no, maybe it was 2.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was there kind of
low ceiling.
Low ceiling.
Yeah.
Standing there, and this roly-poly taxi driver's working the line, like the front line. He's like, anybody downtown? Anyone downtown? He's looking for single people. Yeah. Like I could see, there was like a couple in front, which means he only had room for 1.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, down. He's like, okay, come with me. So I ducked out. Sorry. He worked the back of the line.
Okay.
That makes more sense. Why would he work the front of the line? The back line. He takes me. And where did he take me? He took me to the public drop-off point.
Okay.
Curbside. And there's some other guy in there. And basically he was doing a cab share. I mean, what the guy did was completely against the rules. He was trying to do pickup he just probably dropped someone off.
Yeah.
And then he didn't want to join the queue.
Grabs a couple people and is like, hey, I'll be around with my car.
Let's
kind
go.
Of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, it's cold, rainy. So I jumped in and it was like some others or businessman type guy, and we hauled into the city, and it was all said and done. But
Yes.
yeah, not quite the way. Where's another one I just thought of? Cairo was always an entertaining
Oh,
one.
yes.
Yeah. You come out and there's like all these Egyptian men. I don't know if there's any female.
And it felt like it would
drivers.
be like, a Grand Bazaar or something of like selling
Yeah.
taxi
And they're
seats, right?
all there, like just on you, like crawling all over you. And unfortunately, the first time I flew into Cairo, I was with a friend that was living there. So he
Okay.
knew exactly what to do. He knew the price and all. But he's a Asian Canadian guy, so he looks as much of a tourist as we do.
Yeah.
And these guys are just trying to take us for the ride. He knew it. Anyway, eventually he got it. And
Yeah.
you get in, it's like this older generation Mercedes that still rides as smooth as silk, and
Yeah.
into the city we went. But if you
I think
didn't
mine
know,
in Cairo was an old Renault.
yeah, or a Peugeot or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So you never know.
Yeah.
Where you're what to look for. Some airport curbsides will also have, they don't have spot for the uncategorized as well. So sometimes a lot of hotels, smaller hotels, will just send their staff driver to pick up their passenger, and they can't afford necessarily to like park the vehicle for long term.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll kind of just be outside hanging around on a curb
And
hoping
moving
you'll see
along
them.
when they get in trouble from the
Yeah.
airport, like, hey, like, get moving kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And that's the last component we didn't mention is, airports do have curbside minders,
Mm-hmm.
guards, police that are out there cracking the whip and having to keep people move along because everybody's going to try and offend.
Yeah.
Parking at airports.
It's only going to be 5 minutes,
Parking at expensive is so expensive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you get people going the wrong. Well, funny you mentioned people going the wrong way because it makes me think of Calgary International, where the car rental return, you go up onto the departures level of domestic and turn off into the parkade into the mid levels.
Okay.
Typically, car rental, if it's in terminal parkade, it's in the lower levels, most commonly.
Right. Yeah. Like 1 or 2, right?
Yeah. And you follow parkade signage and you go down and do your thing. But Calgary's got this funny system where you
Like
go
on
up onto
level
departures.
6 or something, or 5.
Yeah, and you shoot in.
Yeah.
And you can also, when you take the car, you pick up the car, you join that departures curb and drive out.
And you shoot out, yeah.
So I can see maybe in Regina why someone might end up going that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot going on the curb. So pay attention.
Yes.
Yeah. And as a pro tip, I mean, it's just more like know the translation of the city and the destination you're going to figure out where you're going to get to correctly. If you want to make it all work.
Yeah. I mean, and then if you do get twisted around,
as part of the adventure,
exactly.
You might end up in the pet relief area. Oh yeah,
pet relief.
Gotta mention that.
Yeah.
Pet relief inevitably always ends up in the arrivals curbside. I've seen it at many airports.
Well, that makes sense.
It makes sense. Where they put it is always interesting.
Yeah.
But you always see like in the midst of it all, you see like this fenced area and a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
Running around peeing and pooing. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Right. So
that's not my cab.
That's right. Yeah. All right. So that was the curb. If you have any interesting curbside experiences, let us know because it's a wild one.
Yeah.
I mean, we've kind of just told you our best experiences and ways to kind of steer you in the right direction. Yeah.
And I mean, my favorite curbside movie scene was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles when Steve Martin takes the shuttle bus to the rental cars.
Oh yeah, and just drops him in like
in the middle of nowhere.
Takes off with the black smoke coming out and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. All right. So, what's going on in the news? Well,
what's happening in the news? Yeah.
Sadly, Queen Elizabeth has passed along. So that's quite the thing for the world. I think, today's 13th September recording and the world's focused, all eyes on London currently.
Exactly. And, hotel prices obviously going up quite a lot in London.
Yeah. I'd be interested as, not that we'd ever have a chance to really get hard facts and figures one day, but the jump in passenger loads, because, inevitably there's masses
Yeah.
going to pay their respects for whatever reason and all flying into London, or for a funeral that's going to be coming up, I believe
The
next
19th.
week. Yeah. So, Heathrow traffic must be pumping.
Yeah. So I'm sure, British Airways, as morbid as it is, I'm sure they were, for their bottom lines, it's like, all right, well, a royal situation like this has probably helped considerably.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Interesting with the Queen's Terminal, the Elizabeth Line, all these things. It puts a whole new perspective on how the monarchy has kind of touched different parts of aviation travel, roadways. We have a few roadways in Canada named after Her Majesty and other parts of the world. So, yeah,
true. And I mean, number of Commonwealth stadiums or stadium and those type of things in various cities around the world as well.
It'd be fun to post, because I'm assuming a lot of heads of state and whatnot will be attending. As we mentioned, the air traffic related to those attending said funeral.
Exactly. And as you and I have talked about offline, where are they all going to park?
Yeah. And that'd be a nice for the outbeats.
And what's like the Flight Radar 24 map going to look over London like next on the weekend before the funeral?
Yeah. A lot of unidentified, uncommon aircraft going in.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that'll change things a little bit for aviation for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of them, who knows? I mean, I don't think anybody's flying a 737 MAX, but I found this article on Simple Flying that was talking about 8.5 hours, the world's longest Boeing 737 MAX flights. So, yeah, looking at various maps here. So, Fly Nordic from TUI flies various long routes through Helsinki, Lanzarote, Sal, Helsinki. But the one that apparently, it's coming up starting on December 6th, Batik Air out of Malaysia is going to fly nonstop from Kuala Lumpur to Melbourne in the world's longest MAX 8 route. And that's the case by distance and block time, inbound at least to Malaysia. So it's 6,306 kilometers, 3,918 miles. So the block in takes 8 hours and 35 minutes in a narrow body 737 MAX.
Why am I feeling nauseous when you're telling me that? Like that to go that long in a narrow body.
A narrow body. I mean, one that I saw that was narrow body and not any good. Looked like it was very good at all. I think it was probably. I think it was before COVID that there was a narrow body Frankfurt to Pune flight.
Oh. Now that being said, though, the 757,
but it was
is a narrow body. Oh, that's just
757, sure, because it does stuff overseas. But I mean, like A320s and
this is the new style of like
exactly
extended range capability narrow body aircraft. I mean, it makes 100% sense, and
from a business standpoint, but from a customer
business standpoint, I'm all for it. Customer experience. I mean, unless you're in JetBlue's Mint Suite, or
the equivalent on other
Qatar's running it, on an airbody. I don't know. As crew, working for WestJet, we used to run to Hawaii all the time, and with the jet streams going the wrong way, not in our favor, we'd run 7.5 hours. Not on a MAX, just on a 37-800 NG. And I could just feel the miserable passenger vibes. Once you sort of reach that 6-hour point, it's like, whoa, people need to get off this plane. It's too cocoon. The bathrooms are getting spent, running out of supply. Like,
Well, and I saw, I mean, I was thinking of doing like a day flight to Heathrow, and it used to exist from Toronto on a wide body. Currently, I think with Air Canada, it's only from Halifax that you can do a day flight, but I think it's like pushing five-ish, six-ish, right? But then
mhm.
there's also the narrow body from St. John's to London, which is, I mean, incredible. Like it's like, what, 3 hours or three
Three
and a half
hours.
hours, right? So,
Yeah, I worked the flight to Dublin,
yeah,
St. John's Dublin on WestJet. Yeah, it was so fast. I'm like, this is shorter than going
then
across the
cross the
country.
country, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
And just like,
And,
I mean, Hawaiian, what they had, it wasn't a 737 MAX, but they were doing Boston to Honolulu nonstop.
mm-hmm.
And that was pushing 7.5 hours or so.
Yep, up pole and straight down across the
Pretty
coast
much,
for the
yeah.
most part. And I mean, Iceland Air's new strategy is Max's to take people over. I think it
Yeah.
said, was it Keflavik, Orlando?
Yeah. So
It's like,
some of the other ones on the list are, let's take a look here. So we've got Sal to Helsinki, Brasilia to Orlando with Gull Airlines, Brasilia to Cancun, Stockholm, Orlando to Boa Vista, Keflavik to Seattle. Yikes, that's a long
ooh.
flight. Brasilia to Miami, Sal to Stockholm, Keflavik to Denver, and Keflavik to Orlando.
Just get stressed out listening to that. I mean,
Yeah.
something about anything past.
And these are all like out, but like at least 7 hours. And well, the shortest one is Sal to Stockholm, Orlando. By the looks of it, the one is like 6 hours and 55 minutes. But then the other direction is not nonstop, but everything else is at least 7 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
Wild.
like, yeah. So I think it's also, when you're booking flights, it's like, okay, like, are you okay with that if you're flying that far?
Yeah. Look at that equipment.
Yeah.
Make a decision. Yeah. Certainly when I'm booking flights, well, that's the ad geek. You're looking at the equipment,
Mm-hmm.
but also just to make a decision about comfort and whatnot. Cool. All right.
So yeah, that was quite the experience with the curbside there, and as I mentioned, that was our experiences, and there's all sorts of experiences when it comes to getting in or out of the airport with various transport methods, and so that does wrap up experience 66 of the Seat 1A podcast. If you liked this podcast experience, be sure to rate us and subscribe. Tell your friends and fellow travelers about us. Make sure you visit us at podcast.seat1a.org for complete show notes. That's Sierra Echo Alpha Tango, the number 1, alpha.org. Feedback, addenda, letting us know where we've messed up. You can send all of that to stories, STORIES, at seat1a.org. If you'd like to support the show financially, we have a page at Patreon, patreon.com/seat1a. Links are included in the show notes.
And here's what you can look forward to in upcoming podcast experiences. We're going to be taking a look at traveling with senior citizens or traveling as a senior citizen and the challenges that exist, as well as those that do have a disability and how does it work for them. As well, we're trying to line up some interesting interviews for those that have traveled recently and had some very bizarre travel experiences. As always, we look forward to hearing your stories. If you have some cool experiences or some subject matter that you would like us to cover, please do let us know. We would be happy to discuss it further in one of our upcoming experiences.
Terrific. So until the next time, I'm Geoff. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Vinod. You're cleared for takeoff. Have a great flight.